From the world's most respected MMO news site, Massively Overpowered, comes a programme that pits one MMO against another in a battle of wits. To the death. Welcome to Massively Opinionated. Media personalities from all over the internet come to this forum to face off in the ultimate debate. Everyone is entitled to their wrong opinion, but ours is the only one that matters. Having heard that someone was wrong on the internet, it's your host, Larry Everett!
Hey everyone, this is Larry Everett with Massively Opinionated, and well, actually with Massively OP, and you're watching Massively Opinionated. And I have some very special guests with me today, where we're going to debate some interesting features and innovations within MMOs. And so I had to bring with me some people who've been around for a while, who's been playing MMOs for, I don't know, years and years, and they're old and crotchety, and
you're not wrong.
So let me introduce these guys really quickly. I've got from MMObomb and a billion other sites. It's Jason Winter, Jason Informal on Twitter. How are you doing, sir?
Winter Informal on Twitter.
Winter Informal. Sorry, Winter Informal. I've got it written.
Informal. I use my last name. Now, if I remember correctly, when my colleague Mike Burton was on the show last, you were actually a contestant with Tina running it, and he beat you. So I want to remind you not to hold that against me. All right.
That's right. I'll promise not to hold that against you. Now,
Colleague bias.
I also have from Gamebreaker TV and Play to Win TV, right?
Yes, Play to Win TV.
I've got Troy Blackburn. How you doing?
I'm doing good, and I can't wait till you get done introducing us, and then let us know who these experts are that you
Oh, you got the crotchety people already, but we've
taken care of the old crotchety guys. Let's get to the experts.
Yeah, so I should let me first go over the rules here. What we're doing and what this is about. We are debating those MMO topics that you discuss in guild chat, in Mumble or TeamSpeak or whatever you happen to use. I know that my guild does this all the time. We talk about what the biggest trends are with MMOs and why everybody else is wrong except for me. And so we're going to debate that. We're going to find out which actually is the best answer to some of these questions. And to go over the rules, what I've done is I've given the questions to these gentlemen before the show started, and they have had a chance to kind of prepare their arguments about what's happening and what the best answer is, and then they're going to debate them. They're going to give their answers, then they're going to say why the other person is wrong, and the person with the best argument is going to get... Huh?
Which will be me.
Well, sure. I'm sure you'll get at least one. At least one, Jason.
It depends on whose check made it to Larry's house first.
That's
I use PayPal.
Oh, yeah. So,
mail, darn it.
And then the person that gets the most points at the end wins the internet, or something to that fashion. And so, like I said, we're going to debate some innovations within MMOs, and actually some massively OP Patreon funders actually sent in some questions for this particular show. And the first one is Bjorn. We know him as Viking, and he specifically talked about Star Citizen calling itself a first-person universe. And I'm going to read his question, although it doesn't exactly fit a whole bunch of games, so I kind of rephrased it a little bit. But his question was, is the first-person universe really a new genre, or is it only something CIG claims Star Citizen is becoming? If it is a first-person universe, then what makes it deserve that label? Which features combine to make it something else other than what we've seen before? And although I don't want to necessarily apply it to just Star Citizen? That is an excellent question, by the way. I think, but the question. So I asked, what or how many features, or if you can quantify some sort of size, how as far as as big as the features can be, what does it take in order to consider something unique? I mean, is the first-person universe unique, or is it not, or what does it take to do that? And I'm going to throw this one to Jason first. So what does it take? How many features does it take in order for something to truly be unique in MMOs?
So I don't think it's about number of features. I think if you're using features that currently exist in other games, that sort of thing, and combining them all into a bunch of big stuff, which if Star Citizen pulls it off, that's great, but that's a big if. But going just with the notion that they are going to pull it off, going to have everything in there they intend on, I don't think that kind of thing alone makes for a new genre, a first-person universe. To me, it's more like it's an MMO with these kind of features, all this different stuff. Other games like Elite Dangerous does a little bit of that. It's not going to have so much of the in-person, avatar kind of combat. No Man's Sky is going to have stuff like that. So, I just wouldn't give it a new title. It's definitely more than what it was. It was originally pitched as like a space sim. And I think that's why they're pushing to give it a new title. I've read a little bit on that. That's kind of why they're trying to do that with Star Citizen, called a first-person universe. They want to push away that whole space sim, concept that it was earlier. Which that was maybe not a full-sized MMO in any kind of sense, but I think what they're doing now definitely is. It's not. Yeah, it's not about the number of things. It's more like something like a MOBA, for instance. A MOBA is definitely different from an MMO. It has some sort of similar elements. It's kind of like a 5-on-5 PvP battlefield. You level up your guys, whatever. But it's definitely a different kind of thing from an MMORPG. And I think you need to have something different and not just more in order to make it its own thing.
So basically, it boils down to the core mechanics have to be different.
Yeah, that's what it is.
You can't just pile on features. Okay.
Right.
So, Troy, throwing it over to you. What do you think?
To me, in this day and age, there are very few individual features that come out that are truly innovative. They're more iterative. Every game takes some of the things that they've done before and other games have done before and just sort of build on that. And over the long-term lifetime of MMOs, that's where you see your innovation. Like you can't really look at 2013's games, compare them to 2014's games, and see a ton of real true innovation. You see iterative improvements. But if you look back over the 20-whatever year cycle of true MMOs, what we think of as an MMO nowadays, look at UO and compare that to, World of Warcraft, Cataclysm, whatever. There's where you see your innovations. And you have to really take a step back and look at the full scale to actually see innovation. And that's why, like nowadays, you feel like the MMO market's sort of stagnant because it's so hard to see true innovation when you're just looking at this year combined to the very next year. That being said, with something like Star Citizen, I don't really know that a first-person universe is really something brand spanking new. I mean, you've got games. I know. Start the argument. We don't want to call it an MMO, but Destiny. If you don't want to call it an MMO, you can definitely call it a first-person universe. Dust 514 is trying to do things like that. For the innovation, to me, it's not as much about individual features being all brand spanking new. This one feature is so innovative. It's how each individual game takes different features and combines them and makes them work in their game. And like you said, look at Star Citizen. I mean, in an era where so many games and a ton of MMOs that we know are flat-out MMOs have done this over the past few years. When they first sort of start doing that PR marketing at the very beginning before they're launched or anything, they try to shy away from being called MMOs. They don't want to put that label on themselves. And here's Star Citizen, who's like, we were probably about to just be labeled another space sim. We want to be an MMO, so here's all the things we're doing to make ourselves an MMO. And they're taking some fairly individual ideas with the space sim and the first-person universe, which in and of itself isn't all that innovative. But if they can combine those together and make a world like Dust 514 tried to with Dust 514 and Eve, and make those sort of one world that really is coherent and works together, there is your innovation.
Excellent. So we really have a division here. We have so Jason, you're saying that the first-person universe thing isn't really in and of itself an innovation. Whereas Troy's kind of saying, yeah, it kind of is, right? I mean, it kind of is because it's all these things stacked on top of each other. So,
yeah, their game as a whole, if they combine those different elements, could definitely be an innovation. The first-person universe by itself, no, not so much. Jason's absolutely right. That's not really a brand new thing. But combined with other elements to turn that sort of thing into a true MMO that really works with other elements, yes, that actually is innovation.
I mean, I sort of see the Eve Dust comparison. Like if it's sort of like the two of them combined, if they can get that to work out. But even then, you know, what is Eve? Okay, Eve is a space sim with economy and so on, and spaceship and so on. And then Dust is a on-planet combat kind of game. Isn't that kind of Star Wars Galaxies? Isn't, I mean, granted, you know,
you gotta love being in a debate with old school MMO players because Star Wars Galaxies will be brought up 100% of the time, every time.
But and I grant that Star Citizen is going to be bigger than Star Wars Galaxies. Certainly has a lot more feature stuff out there, but the core of it, hey, it's a sandbox. There's ground stuff. There's space stuff. There's no lightsabers. But you know, isn't it basically the same thing, only bigger?
What do you say, Troy? I mean, is it the same thing? I mean, is it the same thing as you know, Galaxies, just with, you know, better graphics and you know, a first-person view, or is it something that's truly innovative?
That's really, I mean, in all honesty, from the outside looking in, yeah, you can absolutely draw parallels. You can, I mean, that's was part of what I was saying initially. Like when you look at all these games stacked on top of one another, they're just iterative. They can all draw parallels between each other. I think, to me, for Star Citizen, if it works, and I know we all keep saying if, don't you just love that? Like, hopefully, I'm not wishing ill will on anybody, but hopefully it does work. If it does work out, it will take they're trying to combine a true space sim and a true first-person game, and take what on the outside looks like two they're even testing them completely separately. Yeah. I mean, we haven't really seen them together other than walking around your little ship bay for a few minutes in first person. That's the only real combination of the two we've seen. Where games like Star Wars Galaxies, you know, they started with the sandbox gameplay, or Star Wars: The Old Republic, or whatever, and they just sort of tack on sort of a space sim game to whatever their base game actually is. And a lot of MMOs do that. This is the core of what our game is, and we're going to tack on a sort of this and a sort of that and a little bit of this. But at the end of the day, we're just tacking it onto our base game. This feels like two completely separate elements trying to be combined in one game. And like I said, we've already seen one developer not pull it off so much. And a lot of that had to do, in my opinion, the fact that Eve is on PC and that Dust 514 was console at the time. I think that just created an even larger disconnect in that universe. But to me, this just feels like two completely separate game elements coming together to try to make one game, and that's what would set it apart and be innovative if it works out. If they can keep from having that disconnect that Dust 514 and Eve had. Yeah.
I don't know. I think. What are your thoughts on that, Jason? I mean, do you think that because if I can kind of sum up, I'm trying to you know, so I can make a call on this as well. So my summation of what you're saying then, Troy, is that there is iterative distance between, say, Star Wars Galaxies and what Star Citizen is doing. There's enough distance between them as far as the completeness of the features, or the evolution of the features, that it is innovative. Is that pretty much what you're saying? I'm trying.
Yeah. To me, there's enough time separation and enough difference in between what they're doing and what something like Star Wars Galaxies did to consider innovation. But there again, you know, there's been at least enough time between the two games where you can sort of look and see the innovation. Where, like, if Star Wars Galaxies had just released a couple of years ago, it probably wouldn't be as obvious. Because they'd be working on, I mean, let's be honest, they'd be working on a lot of the same server technology and that kind of stuff. I mean, that makes a difference too.
Well, then they would have already
handle and game engines can handle makes a huge difference in how a game can innovate.
Yeah, and they would have already killed it with the NGE. So.
Yeah.
But no, what I'm getting more of, like, in terms of the innovative thing, which I can kind of guess. What I can kind of get is, like I said, you've got a first-person shooter. That's a type of game. That's something that a lot of games have. you also got a space sim, and it seems like the combination of those two could be regarded as something innovative in its own right, because it's like having two separate games combined, which, granted, people don't do a whole lot of. Again, Galaxy sort of did it, but more tab targeting, like action combat or whatever. And that's the thing. And then you have a game like No Man's Sky also doing the same kind of thing. They're going to have that same ground and space sort of thing. So that, to me, the innovative part of something like that, or like Elite Dangerous is a good example, is having this big, huge universe to explore. And I actually haven't looked into seeing how much exploration and what kind of level that is in Star Citizen. I know Elite and I know No Man's Sky are going to have a lot of space out there to look at. That, to me, is a little more innovative than just peanut butter and chocolate going together. The shooter and the space sim.
Okay. So, man, this is.
But peanut butter and chocolate is so delicious together, Jason.
I know, right? Gosh, I think this is a tough call. I think that.
These are all such great questions. Like this almost like these are almost hard to debate. They're almost
they really
discussion, and then nobody really walks away a winner.
I know.
It's just a discussion, right?
I definitely So I definitely see the whole idea of the whole idea that there definitely has to be a separation between something that came before and what exists now. So, for instance, with the Star Citizen, Star Wars Galaxies kind of separation there. But I do see. So it's just really what's really kind of funny is Troy kind of made Jason's argument for him a little bit whenever he said that if Star Wars Galaxies was released today, they'd be working with the same technology, and I would kind of have to, in that sense, I would kind of have to agree with Jason because Star Wars Galaxies, if it were released today, would kind of look like Star Citizen. I mean, as far as the feature set and things along that line are concerned, and I guess, and this kind of boils down to the arguments that were given. I don't think that you can weigh innovation strictly on its painting, like the way it appears. So you can't really necessarily base it off of its graphical quality. So I'm going to give this point this time to Jason, just because it's so close, though, man. It really is. I see a lot of Troy's points. My point this time goes to Jason. So point number one. Wow, and we could literally debate that one forever. I think we could just go back and forth and talk about, the different nuances of that. And
that's the sad part. I removed I don't know, a dozen more talking points from my notes just because I knew we didn't want to be here for 3 hours, right?
I know, right?
Not anything that I feel like would finish making my point for me, but just other things that we could absolutely dive into off of that one question.
Yeah,
and I've been on the show long enough to know that all you have to do to get points from Larry is appeal to Star Wars Galaxies.
My major mistake in this episode, I didn't wear my Star Wars shirt.
Oh man.
I'm wearing a Guild Wars shirt.
Man.
Same game, right? Yeah, same.
All right. Well, that was a great question there, Viking. I really appreciate it. Again, like I said, we could talk about that forever. But let's move on to the next question, and this one is from Dwayne, not The Rock. Another another reader of Massively OP, and his question is also another one. These are amazingly well thought out questions. Honestly, they are, and they make it a little bit hard to debate sometimes. But I like his question. He said, "What are your thoughts on beta, soft launch, relaunch, and others launch on other platforms? Those kinds of things that allow games, both good and not so good ones, multiple major chances to advertise and market. Does it hurt or help the industry as a whole, and why?" And so, to kind of reformat that question a little bit, I said, for an MMO trying to fund its production cycle, what is the best cycle for the developers and the players? So the cycle that is presented has to be good for both the developers and the players. We don't want to burn out the players. Anyway, we'll get into the debating it here in a bit. So I'm going to throw this to Troy here first. And what do you think is the best development cycle as far as that is concerned?
Not what we have right now. Early access, paying thousands of dollars into games before they ever even exist. Buying hundreds of dollars worth of virtual ships. Don't get me wrong, I've spent my money on virtual things plenty of times. We all have, right? And I'm not trying to tell you to spend your money, but giving $300 for a virtual thing, and that virtual thing still doesn't even exist yet, like that's a whole nother animal. But early access, look, there are cycles that are better for the developer. There are cycles that are better for the player. The question is, where is that happy medium? Early access isn't it. The older school closed betas, open betas, where they don't take all your money and then hide under the disguise of open beta for years in some instances. I mean, games exist to a point now in quote-unquote open beta, but we're taking all your money. To the point where you forget that they're not launched. Like, you go back and they're like a year and a half later, like, oh, we're officially launching. And even those of us who cover the games were like, huh?
Oh, you launched? Yeah.
Official launching? Wait a minute. Like, I finished my review on your game a year ago. What is happening? But no, I mean, the best way to do it is just have like a closed beta and open beta. Get players in there. Let them play. The ones who are gonna play and test. If you've got people paying to get into your game still obviously needs testing in these early accesses and these paid alphas nowadays. Oh my God, it's just gonna keep getting worse. They're gonna let you pay to watch them render a model on Twitch at some point, and that's probably already a thing, and I just try to ignore it inside my brain. But the people who pay to get into your alphas and betas, a lot of them, and I don't want to try to quantify percentages without having facts on top of my head, but you can just see online. All you got to do is look online for 10 minutes, and you'll know off the bat. Those people aren't coming to test a game. They have given you money. They're coming to play a game. They're coming to judge you as if you're a final product, no matter how many early access labels and closed beta, open beta, we're still in alpha labels you want to throw on it. Once a player gives you their money, most of them, a lot of them at least, are judging you as a complete game, a finished game, and that's not good for anybody. Now, it is good for the developers because they're getting so much money up front. What I'm a huge fan of, and I've seen it time and time again, and here in just a second I'll give an example of something that's not quite an MMO, but it sort of makes the point of what's going to happen going forward. Just have a closed beta and an open beta. Quit taking people's monies for that kind of stuff. Crowdfunding, that to me, crowdfunding's a whole other argument. What I'm a huge fan of is the closed beta, open beta launch. I'm not going to sit here in open beta for 2 years taking your money, my cash shop. If your cash shop is open, your game is launched. I'm sorry. I've had arguments with Neverwinter directly about this. They've had nasty remarks about things I've had to say. If your cash shop is open, you are launched.
Yeah.
If you're accepting money and people are judging your game as if it's a finished product, you are launched. What I love is the closed beta, open beta, launch the game. And what we've been seeing a lot recently is wait a few months and then hit Steam with it, right?
Yeah.
Then, even though this wasn't ESO's plan to begin with, they planned to launch on console. But waiting a year to launch on console actually proved to be a very good thing for the game because they struggled on PC. If they'd have launched on console at the same time, they'd have struggled there too. Launching on console a year later after the free-to-play conversion gave that game new life. Launching on Steam with MMOs gives tons of games new life. Good games get re-recognized for being good games. If it's a bad game, you're still going to get ignored. You'll get a little game, but you should be making bad games in the first place. But good games get more opportunities, and along with that, a lot of times is coming even further innovation, if you want to call it, improvements to the game. When they go to Steam, they're launching with some new features that improve the game, especially when we're seeing games move over to console. not MMOs are slowly making the transition, but we're still sort of in the infancy of a lot of MMOs really sort of making their way over to console. Yeah. But like, look at Elder Scrolls Online. It's going to console right now. All of a sudden, PC players are finally going to get official controller support for that game on PC because they went to console. It's improving the game for everybody because it launched on a new platform a little later. Games go to Steam. You look at something like, and this is sort of console related too, but a not MMO, but this is where MMOs, this is just an example of where MMOs could go as they start launching on additional platforms. Divinity Original Sin is making the move to console this year. Along the way, that game has added a ton of improvements. Those improvements are coming to us, the PC player, as the enhanced edition for free, full voice acting, controller support, lots of tweaks and improvements to the game. We're getting an updated game just because they wanted to make a game on console. They decided all these improvements, this was a good time to do it. We're reaping the benefits. As more and more MMOs start launching on multiple platforms like that, we, the players on the original platforms, are going to start seeing some excellent throwbacks to the improvements that are being made to get those games out on additional platforms.
So, if I can boil this down to
yeah, that was a little long.
Yeah, if we can boil this down a little bit to kind of clarify. So you're good with you like closed beta, open beta, launch, and then you're cool and you think that it's beneficial to do a Steam launch and a console launch, and I guess those don't necessarily happen in any particular order, but
yeah, those, whatever.
Yeah, so like a Steam launch and a console launch, you're cool with all those steps. You think that that's beneficial for both. All right.
The only additional step that still is not a good thing, even though it can be a good thing for the improvement of the game, going free to play later still has such a stigma to it. Automatic. Oh, that game's failed. You're going free to play. It's been a great thing for Elder Scrolls Online, but it still comes with the stigma that it did 3-4 years ago.
Yeah. All right, Jason.
You'll have to remind me of the question. It's been a while.
My caffeine's kicking in. I'm sorry.
What is the all right? So what is the best development cycle from like the beta, early access, all these things that we see now, Steam early access? What is the best iteration for both the developer and the customer?
For the customer, for the players, the best thing would be to actually have there be a functional game that is released as such at launch. Now, yeah, that's really rare because
you're a funny guy.
I know. I am. I remember when that was a thing, like 10 years ago, and a lot of that too is, you know, I just think developers get these big, giant saucer eyes when they have either money from crowdfunding or their other kind of investment, and they're just like, and this is kind of tying back into Star Citizen. It's like, we can add this, and this. It only had like 2 months for some of the process. We can do this, right? Yeah, no problem. So they still budget out that 2 months, and then they run longer than that, and it's late, and then stuff doesn't get done, and it's buggy. So that's why you wind up with a lot of these games that are just so buggy at launch, or they have the 90-hour crunch for 6 months or whatever, which is bad for the employees as well. And I just feel like overextension of scope and overconfidence in your abilities is what leads to a lot of these not so great games coming out. I get the notion of having the long, year-long betas or whatever to try and iron this stuff out, but I again agree with Troy that once you start taking their money, it's a launch game. That's when people are going to judge it as a thing that they're going to do right there, and that's when we're going to write reviews about it. Sorry, hope you like that, but if people are wondering if they can spend their money, we're going to write reviews and judge it based on whether they should spend their money. So deal with that. I in terms of just the whether they should get that second chance when they relaunch on Steam or go free to play or whatever, I'm kind of two minds. I mean, I feel if you're bad enough to launch your game before it's ready and it's a piece of crap, you deserve the negative feedback, and that should stick with you. But on the other, and encourage you not to do it again. But on the other hand, if your game genuinely does improve, again, a lot of games are always going to do that. Even if they have a rocky launch, maybe a year later they're better. You look at something like what WildStar is trying to do. You look at Marvel Heroes is kind of like the poster child for this. That's why they keep calling it Marvel Heroes 2015, Marvel Heroes 2016. It's so they get re-rated on Metacritic. That's what David Brevik actually said, basically. Yeah. So they get new reviews. Because our original Metacritic was like 58 or something, and I just looked at Marvel Heroes 2015, and it's 81. So that makes sense because it is a better game now. I'm sure WildStar would like to get re-reviews of everything, and they'll obviously get some. They'll obviously get some more reviews and more new stuff. When they go free to play next week.
It's WildStar Reloaded, right?
Yeah, WildStar. Oh god, that is what I hate the absolute most. Conan Unchained, Dungeons and Dragons Online Unlimited, Tamriel Unbound, or whatever the hell it is. It's still the same damn game. Shut up. Shut up. I hate that more than anything. But yeah, I mean, the best thing for devs and players is to actually have a realistic schedule of what you're going to do. Which again, the money runs out eventually. You look at 38 Studios. Look at Pathfinder. But whenever I see that, I know people are all like, "Oh, it's sad they had to lay off all their people and whatever." And I'm like, if they're and generally the people up in charge, not necessarily the low-level programmers or whatever, but the people in charge running the business with the money and whatever. Oh, they lost their job? Tough. Do it better. That's just my thought on that sort of thing.
So, I'm gonna need to divide here definitely. So, and I kind of see that you're leaning away from the whole idea of a relaunch unless there is. Or a rebranding. It's not really a relaunch. If it's
we put this little tagline on the end. It's a whole new game now.
Yeah, but Troy's other, and correct me if I'm wrong here. Troy's
because you have like 20 minutes of the conversation to boil down a couple words. So.
Yeah.
So Troy's of the mind that it's fine if there's like if you're moving to console or something like that, but. Jason, you're like, no. If it's pretty much the same game, you're just launching on console. It's not a relaunch, right?
Right. You get new innovations. You get, like you said, the controller support or whatever. But stuff happens like that in a lot of games.
So why is Troy wrong about that?
Geez, he had so much. I can't. Where do I start? I mean, I think that's
put me to sleep in the first 5 minutes. So there we go.
Yeah, I think that's a part of it, though, is that, he says that, well, when because if they're going to console, that's where they're getting controller support. And, granted, obviously, Elder Scrolls is always going to go to console. But you look at games like World of Warcraft, for instance, they've added things, they've changed different things in that. They've never gone to console. They never had a relaunch or a free-to-play move or whatever the hell. So, I mean, games are going to innovate like that. I don't necessarily think that's tied to directly, doing that sort of thing. Again, trying to think of what else he said because I was asleep for most of it. But yeah, that'll just be the point I hang my hat on. There we go.
All right. So, so Troy, then why is it important then that they get these relaunches, and why is it okay? Why is it beneficial for the main thing? The main thing I guess I have a question in which Jason kind of was hitting on as well was why are these relaunches? I mean, if you look at Elder Scrolls Online, for instance, why is that relaunch on console beneficial to the players in long term?
Because right now the numbers on console for Elder Scrolls Online blow away anything PC has ever been. And like I said, if they would have launched together at the exact same time, they would have both been having the same problems and sort of probably be both looked at pretty similarly. At this point, the whole game would be considered a failure. The relaunch on console gave them, I mean, as a PC player for Elder Scrolls Online and part of the Testo Nation podcast, we've been covering this game for a long time. All the time we say we were alpha and beta testing for the console players, and that's absolutely what we're doing. Tons of kinks got worked out, tons of systems got introduced, things that didn't work changed, the things that did work got improved. The champion system got introduced, but we still got veteran ranks. But that's here or there right now.
Don't even.
let's get into that right now. But no, and the console had an opportunity to give them a secondary launch with the improved version of the game. The console is the future of something like Elder Scrolls Online now. All the money they're making off console is paying for my DLCs and updates to be introduced on PC now, and yeah, Elder Scrolls Online absolutely did intend to go console from day one. They absolutely intended to, but just as a here in your face example of why that was beneficial to not just console players getting a game that had been tested and improved, things had changed. We were not going to get official controller support on PC unless the console version came out. That is absolutely tied to the fact that console launched when it did, the fact that PC players are getting official controller support. And that's just one example. There's, like I said, there's other games out there that are outside the MMO genre that are getting improvements, and as more and more MMOs start making that leap specifically to like the console, we're going to start seeing further improvements for MMOs as that becomes more of a thing, because hey, guess what? Developers have realized console players want to play MMOs too. Oh my god!
Can I get a rebuttal? See, this is the point, though. This is where you're contradicting yourself, though, Troy. Because you say that, okay, well, they had it on PC for a while, and then they did the new thing on console with all the new improvements. It's like, isn't that the same thing as, oh, it wasn't beta for 9 months and it was kind of crappy, but then they were taking your money, they were fine with that. And now they relaunched it, and it's better now. That's what it is. If you think of the PC thing is like that long beta where you had to pay for the incomplete game, but now it's complete. So we get our money back for the time we were testing? No, definitely not that.
Well, if it was if you wanted to make that argument for like the PC version launching on Steam or something, then yeah, you could probably make that argument. But on console, you're launching to a whole new audience. I mean, yes, there's people who move to the console and there's people who play both. But at the end of the day, you've got an opportunity to launch an improved game to a mostly entirely brand new audience.
But that's
when you make the move to another console.
That's like having a free-to-play game that's got early access. You have to pay $50 to get in. You have to pay money, and then you get to test it for a while. Then they launch it for real, and it's free-to-play, and you get the whole new audience in. So.
Well, you're still initially marketing to the exact same audience, though. You're just, when you launch free to play, you're going to get some more of that audience who didn't want to pay the money to get in early. Yes, absolutely, but you don't necessarily have a brand whole new genre of audience that maybe hasn't even heard of your game or familiar with what an MMO is, like you do when you make a switch to something like a console.
Yeah. Wow. Okay, so. I'm gonna ask one more question. I think I have in mind which direction I'm leaning, but I do have one more question for Jason. How is it more beneficial then if both let's say the console and the PC launched at the same time, regardless of future innovation or not? How is that more beneficial to, I guess, everybody or anybody?
Well, if they would have both, if for instance the console version would have launched, or if the PC and console twin version would have launched earlier this year like the console did, and therefore had all the stuff that they had to get finished in it, and have all the innovation and so on, then it would have been better. Launching last year when it was in the state that it was in was obviously would not have been that great. So, again, it's just a matter of having the time to iterate on the stuff you need to have done, putting in things like the justice system and whatever that everybody wanted at launch. All the PC players certainly wanted, because that's just like how it is in an Elder Scrolls game. If it would have, and again, we know why it is, because it costs a lot of money to make this stuff. They got to make that money back quickly as possible. That's what it's all about eventually. But yeah, it's not like they could have really done it. And that would have been maybe bad for the developer not to have that kind of money for that length of time. But I mean, again, that's just a matter of scope and knowing what you're in for when you try to make one of these games.
All right. So, wow, this is a tough call, because there's one way that I'm leaning because of the way I personally see it, but I think there is some arguments in there that are really that made me think a little bit. I actually agree with Jason, but I'm going to have to side with Troy on this one, because I think that the last part was really, really great. The idea that this is a brand new audience that you're marketing to, and I think that if we actually look at some of the facts regarding, if we use Elder Scrolls Online as an example, and I know it's not necessarily the only example of this, but but if we look at that as an example, Elder Scrolls Online on its PC launch made up its money, and then therefore anything that it's doing on console is, I guess, icing, or it's not
as close to icing as you could ever get as a video game developer.
Exactly. So I think that I think that launching to a whole new audience, it benefited the players, it benefited the developers. So I think that overall, as far as that argument is concerned, Troy gets the point on that. So
I'm not going to get shut out.
Just didn't benefit the PC players who are paying for a crap game.
Well, that's I guess, gosh, because that's actually where I agree with you, Jason. Is that yes? But I can't say that. I can't.
I know you give Troy.
I can't quantify. I can't quantify. Is this? Can I actually say this is a crap game, even though I believe it's a crap game?
That crap.
Can I say this is a crap game if people are still playing it, still enjoying it, and if, for instance, Troy has had a podcast about it for over a year? So, I mean, anyway.
Jason, the mail just ran and my check just arrived. So. That's what's happening.
That's what it was. Yeah.
All right. Check the PayPal.
So let's move on to the third question, which I was looking at the answer, not the question there. We're talking about innovation, and so we're playing off of that. So playing off of innovation of both development cycles and the actual game features, I would name an already released MMO, if released today, would be considered the most innovative. So, basically, what I was getting at there, and we did actually have to clarify this question, and I wanted to say it does have to be the vanilla version, or if there is an actual reboot. I mean, I don't consider like the Tamriel Unlimited a reboot because it's pretty much the same game, whereas like the Star Wars Galaxies NGE would totally be a reboot, even though it was a complete failure. So
that's what I went with.
Yeah,
darn.
When
you're supposed to go Star Wars, right, Jason?
That's right. So anyway, if launched today, what would be the most innovative MMO? And Jason, go first.
I probably still answered this question wrong because I was thinking like combining it with the next one.
I think I did too, kind of.
Okay.
So. just go with it.
We're both going to get
I think you're all right. I think you're all right. Go ahead.
All right. I went with Free Realms actually, and I went with this because first of all I realized, because I do a little research on this. I always thought that like Dungeons and Dragons Online was the first real free to play North American game, but actually Free Realms came out a few months before DDO made that switch, so it was kind of like the first Western free to play MMO. But because of that, I almost felt like it was almost too innovative for its time. Like back then, we didn't know what to make of this. Like you talk about going free to play is still a stigma, and it certainly was back then. I remember when I first looked at it, I was like, "Really? This is actually free? Are you sure?" Because I don't know if I believe you. So yeah, I mean, I played around with it a little while, and the thing is, and yeah, we can still talk about how it's a bit of a stigma nowadays, but it's certainly a lot more acceptable nowadays to have free to play games out there. And I think because of that, because it was so early and kind of new back then, I think SOE maybe struggled a little bit to find out what its niche was. And it's weird to say this, that nowadays with all the free-to-play games we have, that throwing another one on the heap would be that innovative or interesting. But I feel like it really did. I feel like it would be a lot better nowadays because it really almost preceded a lot of the stuff that we see in mobile games, like tower defense games, pick 3 stuff, that sort of thing that you see a lot more of nowadays. And I think SOE or Daybreak or whoever could do a better job with it and present it as more of a, hey, this is that kind of inclusive family kind of game, has all the stuff you like. It has, it's got its own little different area because it's like it's a 3D MMO type thing. You go around, do stuff in a world and so on. But it has, like I said, it has those elements of stuff you're familiar with. So on some level, it would be like the next iteration of phone games. They would probably have a Flappy Bird clone or something in there, I'm sure, at this point if they released it today. And I know it sounds like it's all derivative. It's all like, oh, here's the same stuff you do before. But
yeah,
the fact that it would be this with an MMO world, I think would make it really a much bigger success than it had been back then.
All right. That you are pulling on my heartstrings just a little bit.
I know. Again, I know because I know you used to play it. That's again.
So anyway, so Troy, which one do you think, if released today, would be the most innovative?
He's playing you, Larry. Don't let him play.
He totally is. He totally is.
I sort of went in sort of a similar direction that Jason did. I picked something that I thought was a little ahead of its time, but I didn't go with like the free to play model sort. I went with more some of the features and stuff that this game had at the time that nothing else at the time really had, and even to this day is a lot of these features are still pretty rare in most MMOs. And I chose City of Heroes. And a lot of the reasons for that, it's sort of because, you know, this question was a little left to interpretation. So I was sort of assuming that, just not trying to invent features that I say, oh, they would have had this by now, but like just assuming like things like engines and server technology and stuff.
Oh,
you know, 2015 server technology in a game engine to make some of the things that were kind of clunky with it work a little better. But I mean, you look at the extensive character creation that game had. Yes, there are some MMOs out there that have that, but you know, character creation in a lot of MMOs is pretty darn limited. Especially at its time, that was an incredible character creation system. It encouraged but didn't require grouping for just questing, which they called missions in game. You got benefits for just being in a group, just to go do everyday missions and questing type material. Really encouraged play between people instead of sort of the in and out that we get nowadays, which is convenient, don't get me wrong. But I mean, this is how you really met people and made friends online long term, grouping up with them and running missions like this. The quests, the missions, they scaled to your group, your levels, your party, however many's in your party, you know, what power systems they were using, all that scaled to whatever your group was doing. It's, you know, Rift does something similar nowadays with like instant adventures, but this was years ago and nobody was really doing that. Everybody was still okay with the sort of, this is my level, this is what I need to be doing. I'm either too high or too low level for it. I move on to something else. The sidekicking, playing with your friends. I mean, different games like Guild Wars 2 does it in a way with the automatic skilling when you go to groups. Rift lets you jump up down nowadays, but for the most part, very few games do true sidekicking where you can sidekick all the way up, or if you're high level, you could sidekick all the way down to play with your friends regardless of levels. Super group bases were guild halls. Guild halls still aren't that commonplace. Look at Guild Wars 2. They've got an expansion coming out this year where guild halls is a big, huge deal. It's, I mean, they're playing it up like it's the biggest innovation in all history. And along with those supergroups and guild halls that City of Heroes had, they had in-game support for coalitions between supergroups. You didn't just say we're buddies. There was an in-game system to say we are friends. These our two supergroups work together to go out and beat up the bad guys.
These are but I mean, honest, but with both of them now being closed, that makes the internet is going to be all over this one, and so. I will agree with Jason on one thing. I think part of that is because they were a little ahead of their time, and people just didn't know what to make of all this stuff. Yeah. Because like free to play was a time where, like Jason said, nobody was free to play, and a lot of these systems were at a time where everybody was still cool with the, I've got a super hardcore grind out this MMO, and if it's my level, it's my level. If it's too high, it's hard. Mm-hmm. So why then is Troy? Why is Free Realms less innovative? Gosh, I hate this argument because they're both amazing games, especially for their time. but why is Free Realms less innovative? Why is it less innovative than what City of Heroes offered?
Because I think, and here again, I mean, you can counter argument what I was saying a little bit with this, but I think less so. Because at its time, yes, the free-to-play was a very innovative thing. It wasn't accepted very well. A lot of my stuff wasn't accepted very well either whenever it first launched. But at the end of the day, the question was sort of, if it launched today, what would be considered the most innovative? To me, the free-to-play would be far less innovative nowadays. But a lot of these systems, while not brand spanking new, maybe there are some games here and there that do them to have that many of those kinds of systems in a game that launched today, that game, because innovation is perception more than actual innovation, players would look at that and go, man, look at all these systems combined in this game that let you play the way you want, how you want to. To me, launched in this day and time, those systems would be considered more innovative by perception than just another free-to-play game.
Wow, excellent argument. You got a counter to that there, Jason?
Yeah, you want me to counter that, or you want me to trash City of Heroes?
Both?
Let's make arguments about how the other's game is closed down now. Because
yeah. Well, I mean, and it's just hard for me because City of Heroes is my first MMO, so now I have to talk bad about it.
That's the worst part of this show.
I know.
Is having, counter debate by breaking down something that you love. I hate that part.
Yeah. I mean, I can agree. I can agree that it had a lot of things that were, innovative for its time, and it did all that. The thing that gets me is that, and this is not on the engine of City of Heroes, because like you said, that would obviously be improved now. You'd have maybe action combat or whatever. But what got me about City of Heroes, reason I quit playing, is it just got so repetitive. It was just go to this building, kill these guys, get that thing, go back out. Kill the guys, go to the building, get back out. That sort of gameplay, to me, is very not innovative today. It's just the same thing over and over. It's kill 10 rats on some slightly different level. And there was just not that much opportunity, I thought. And I know they had raids, and they had even the I forget what they were called. You could do kind of like a series of missions or whatever as you went along.
Strike Forces.
Something like that. That's what it was. Yeah. That was kind of neat. That was like the only content that I thought, looking back, that I think was especially innovative. Obviously, back then, my first MMO, this was all amazing and amazeballs and whatever. And then when I got back in, after I went free to play, I checked it out again for a while, and I was like, man, this is boring as soap. So yeah, that's where I think in terms of the actual gameplay, because I talk about this all the time. It's like, again, I'm going to go back to WildStar. And I'm going to say, people were like, oh, man, the combat is so amazing. It's like, yeah, okay, what do you do every time? Well, you go out and you kill 10 things and you come back all the time. But the combat is so awesome. Like, I don't care how great the combat is. Terra was the same way for me. It's like, oh, go out and kill 10 things and come back every time. But it's action combat. I don't give a bleep. You're just doing the same thing over and over. Whereas at least a game like Free Realms did have you going around doing a lot of different things, trying different items and so on, and just at least being more innovative on that sense, I think.
Wow. Counter to that, Troy?
The biggest counter I've got is the repetitive content going to kill 10 dread. You described 90% of the MMOs out there. So it's not. So yeah, the systems are super innovative, and maybe it is repetitive, but so is every other MMO out there. That's not the part that we're considering innovative here. I think.
I think that's part. I think not having
that we're considering innovative.
Pretty innovative.
Wow. So, final thoughts, Troy, on City of Heroes. Because I'll use this time to think about it a little bit.
It's just a delayed that. You can just talk about it.
This is totally a delayed tactic.
Since Troy's already talked for 30 minutes in a spurt one time, let's see if he can do it again.
That'll give me enough time to process all this.
It's just to give Larry a chance to think about it without him to listen to like a counterpoint of what we're arguing. We could just spend just a minute or two talking about WildStar, because I absolutely agree with Jason on that point, man. The combat itself, yeah, it was fun, but man, did they miss the mark on questing in that game, or what? I mean, go to Quest Hub A, kill 10 rats. Go to Quest Hub B, kill 10 more rats. To me, I mean, the focus on WildStar when it quote unquote became a failure on the internet was hardcore. You got to be locked in to get into the raids. Yada yada yada. It's so hardcore. It's too hardcore. But I quit long before we got to that part, man. I was like, I mean, how many quest hubs can I go to and kill 10 things before I'm just like, okay, this is just not doing anything for me here. But yeah, just trying to talk about WildStar for a minute.
So I gotta say, as far as the argument is concerned, I think Jason hit you pretty hard with the what are you gonna do, and then
but my argument, I never brought up gameplay one time in my innovative argument.
Oh yeah, why should we talk about the gameplay? I mean, just
like I said though, because if we're going to talk about the gameplay in MMOs, why is it so much worse than any other MMO out there?
Well, you're right. You're right. It's not. And what Jason was hitting on was that is one of the ways that Free Realms was innovative over City of Heroes as a whole. And gosh, it's really tough to argue that I think that one of the staples of MMOs is its longevity, and although yes, City of Heroes did last a long time, I'm not gonna, but I think that there's just so, if it were to launch today, which was one of the things that has to happen, that if we see a game that has these missions that are extraordinarily repetitive, it's not going to last very long. Whereas Free Realms, the missions were absolutely not repetitive. I mean,
why not? Skyforge is doing it.
Yeah, we see where that's going.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I'm gonna give the point this time to Jason. And gosh, Free Realms.
I've got to start using PayPal. I just tried to mail another check, but I got a feeling it's like.
All right, so wow, this is.
Free Realms just beat City of Heroes. I feel like it's such a failure. Free Realms. Oh my god.
All right, well, maybe you get another chance here because we focused on just the innovative features themselves, and I'd like to ask which MMO, because of its innovative features, is the most underappreciated. So let's go to Troy. And let's see if we can bring up a tie here.
For me, there's only one answer to this question. It's the most underappreciated MMO
I know
by
exactly
far.
what you're going to say. I know exactly.
Sir, you do.
I thought about it, but I was like, no, Troy's going to use that one.
I had a backup in case you got to go first here. It's Rift. Man, it's Rift. It's always Rift. Oh, that's not where you thought I was going? Okay.
No, I thought you were going Secret World.
Oh, no. Secret World would be a good go there. But to me, the most underappreciated for innovative features is Rift. Because Secret World, I did think about, but there's too much kind of argument to how terrible the combat is. They tell a good story, but my God, the rest of it is so trash. I mean, I enjoy the game. I'm not trying to knock Secret World. That sounds terrible to say that, but...
No,
it's
we're
like
totally about knocking other games here. This is what this show's about.
Secret World, it's like reading a book. It's like reading a good book, but you hate to turn the pages. Turning the pages is such a pain in the butt. That's what the Secret World.
The pages are made of lead.
Yeah, it's a great story, but the pages are so heavy. But for me, it's Rift. It's always Rift. Anytime somebody says underappreciate anything, and even when you talk about innovative features, because For two of the three questions we've discussed so far, I've talked about how innovation isn't really like the brand spanking new thing. It's more about the improvements made over time, the iteration of what you've done to improve over what others are. That's sort of, especially in the short term, that's where the innovation is more perceived. For me, Rift hits a lot of innovative tones. The biggest problem they've got, and here's your big counter argument, Mr. Winter.
Well, I've got plenty.
Outside looking in, when you sit down with Rift for 5 minutes, it looks like a WoW clone. It looks like every other MMO out there. That's Rift's biggest problem. It was their big marketing ploy in the beginning. They were going for that audience, and that's how I found the game. The World of Warcraft players who were fed up with Cataclysm. The problem is they haven't done a good job of going beyond we're a WoW clone, because those features are so rich and deep and beyond anything WoW has ever had, even before they started dumbing themselves down. You've got the dynamic event system. No other game does it like Rift. Dynamic events spawn anywhere, everywhere. They tell stories through dynamic events. They run events through dynamic events. There are zone events that get players out in the world, going to lower level zones. Because you've got the system where you can sidekick down and be the proper level to actually get the right XP and play with your friends. You've got characters scaling to your friends back and forth. You've got an extensive class system that a lot of games are getting away from right now. You've got mixing and matching of multiple souls. You've got 4 archetypes. Those archetypes, they can all tank, heal, or DPS, but they do so in very different ways. They've each got a very unique class mechanic, and you can combine those in any way you want. There's some super broken builds. There's some super OP builds, but there are plenty in between builds that are absolutely viable to allow you to play the way you want in a day and age where other MMOs go like, oh, you hit a level, every 5 levels, we're going to give you one choice to making something. You've got points to spend over multiple skill trees to create your build. You've got instant adventures, much like we were just talking about with Innovation, with City of Heroes, with their missions. Those scale to the group. They instantly teleport you to where you need to be to do the instant adventure. There's no running around, taking 30 minutes to get from point A to point B. They scale to the group. They automatically scale you to the zone of the level. They teleport you all around the world in group adventures that earn XP and excellent rewards. The best wardrobe system in any game by far. There again, wardrobe system, not all that innovative. The iteration of it, the improvement of it, and absolutely having the best wardrobe system in any MMO whatsoever, which probably before that, in my opinion, would have went to probably Lotro. Rift does it so much better. Factions for PvP do not matter in PvE. That antiquated BS is gone. All those players can play their PvE content together. Nobody, besides World of Warcraft, only because you've been playing it since the beginning, do you give a damn whether somebody's on the other faction or not. If they're in PvP, if they're on the enemy team, that's all you need. That's all you need to kill them. Nobody cares. Nobody cares. In any other game, if you're out in the PvE world, nobody cares what faction you are. We just want to play with as many people as possible. That antiquated system is gone in Rift. A lot of iterative innovation. At the end of the day, that's where innovation really comes from, is the iteration and improvements on systems over time.
Okay, wow. Really solid answer there. So, Jason, what was yours?
I talked about it a little bit earlier, but I'm going to go with Dungeons & Dragons Online. Now, it's a little hard for me to talk about this because I haven't actually played it myself for probably about 4 or 5 years, so it's been a while. But I know it always struck me as being a very different kind of game. You know, it's not like your typical, tab target, go on your rotation. You got, like Troy said, like games that have 3 powers or 4 powers, you just go through those. It is a little more like Rift in the sense that you do build your character just like you would a D&D character, and you're going to have a lot of different options for how to get new skills and powers and spells, whatever, as you level up. So it's definitely got that part of it, which is something you don't see a whole lot of these days. And it's got a very different style of combat. It definitely feels very well like a Dungeons and Dragons game. It definitely it adheres probably more closely to the source D&D material than Neverwinter certainly does. Neverwinter is just kind of borrows from it, and I never played Pathfinder, but that's Pathfinder, so forget it. But yeah, I mean, if you want that kind of experience, if you want that kind of tabletop D&D experience, what I would really love is if I could actually have a group of like 4 people that we would do this sort of thing with on a regular basis, like an old D&D group. I think it'd be great for something like that, but it's not something you really need in a lot of newer MMOs, where it's just like, which is a good thing. Like we talk about that in Rift or in Guild Wars 2, where you can just log in, find some random crap going on, and go do it and get some experience and do whatever, and then go on the next thing. DDO feels like you really, and again, felt like 5 years ago, and I imagine it's more or less the same now. I know they've added henchmen to try to make things a little easier, but it does feel like the kind of game where you would like to have a group to go in to do stuff, to go into a dungeon or into an instance or whatever. I think it had a little bit of issues, like in the post-World of Warcraft world. Obviously, they were developing it before WoW came out, back when everyone was making all sorts of different kind of MMOs, and it kind of got subsumed by that. I think WoW became the fantasy MMO that everyone played, and all the different iterations of that thereafter. DDO was its own thing, has always stayed its own thing, so that's made it a little less accessible to a lot of people. But if you're the type of person who's like, oh, MMOs are too easy today and they all play the same, you should definitely take a look at Dungeons & Dragons Online. They even have a permadeath mode. You can actually go in and play it kind of like an actual D&D group. If your character dies, he dies, unless you can get a cleric there to res him within 10 minutes or whatever. So, and it's been out for almost a decade. It's got a really dedicated fan base, and it's just something that you really would like to get into, or at least I would really like to get into if I could find the right kind of people and the right kind of way to play it.
Okay, so both of you guys were, I mean, those are great features as far as like why they're both underrated. And so what I'd like to do is throw it then to Jason here. And why is DDO better and possibly more underrated than Rift?
I think it's more underrated because I think it didn't. I mean, it probably did have the big marketing push. I wasn't really paying that much attention to MMOs when it launched, but it seems to me like Rift really got a lot more publicity and was a lot more well known and so on. And it doesn't really seem all that underrated to me. I guess it doesn't seem like it flies that far under the radar. It seems like a pretty major game, whereas DDO is a lot more niche to me. It's a lot more, and I also feel like a lot of people probably dismissed DDO when it first came out again because of the weirdness of it, because of how different it was. Whereas Rift is kind of almost the opposite, where people maybe dismissed it because it was too similar. But thanks to the free-to-play move for Rift, which came certainly more recently than DDO, I feel like more people have gotten into that more recently. Obviously, they made a lot of innovations, all the stuff you talked about, and so on. So I feel like on some level, it's done a better job of trying to modernize and be a little more like a game that you want to play now, a newer game coming out. Whereas DDO seems to me, again, and I haven't played it in a few years, but just kind of following the news, it seems like it sticks a little more closely to its roots of being that older kind of MMO. But a lot of people claim they want. They're like, oh man, I wish we had... I remember back when MMOs were great and they were hard and so on, and there's nothing like that anymore. Oh yeah, there kind of is actually, but again, it had a rough launch, rough first couple of years or whatever.
Yeah. So
you probably ignored it back then, and you haven't thought to look back at it since. So, but it's still, like I said, it's still there. It's not so small that it's like, oh, it could vanish tomorrow. Granted, who knows what's up with Turbine, if Lotro's going to vanish in a couple of years, but whatever. But it seems fairly stable as that sort of thing goes. Yeah. Obviously, it has a pretty decent license attached to it, so it's not, crap online or whatever that you've never heard of. So I think it's got some potential for that.
Okay, so Troy, why is Jason completely wrong?
I think Rift is more underappreciated than DDO because it's easy to look at DDO and see what it is and tell what it is. It's pretty obvious this is a more hardcore game. Here next week we're getting a relaunch of a game that proves people say they want hardcore games, but not so much. Because for all the issues that Jason and I have with WildStar, the big perception was the problem was the hardcore at the end. But for me, Rift is more underappreciated simply because when you sit down and give it those first 5 minutes, DDO, it's pretty easy to tell this is what DDO is. It does a good job of presenting itself. And yeah, absolutely, this is probably Trion's fault because this is the direction they went at the time, and that's perception that is stuck, is that it's a WoW clone, and what the game actually is and what it offers gets lost behind that. So I feel like Rift is more underappreciated simply because there's a misunderstanding of how deep the game is and what the game has to offer, whereas when you look at DDO, it's a very niche game, but it's very obvious it's a niche game and what that niche game is about when you sit and look at it. And if it was as underappreciated, there wouldn't be as many people. Like the people who love it, love it.
Yeah, yeah.
The people who don't love it just see it for what it is and go, no, it's not for me. That's not underappreciated. Underappreciated is a misunderstanding of what you're looking at. and you don't realize what all a game has to offer if you would just dig just a little bit deeper under the surface.
Do you have any encounters to that, Jason? Okay, I think that answers the question. I think Troy hit you pretty hard there with the arguments there, Jason. I'm going to have to give the point to Troy on this one. Although, truly, they're both very underappreciated.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, but point goes to Troy on this one, which means that things are tied up, right? So we have...
Gotta get ready. Gotta get pumped.
So for this last question, I'm going to go way back. All right, I'm going to go way back when the word MMO.
This is going to be a problem
for
me.
Was innovative, and so my question, and so the way I'm going to do this is the first person I hear answer the question, that is the person that is going to get that answer. The other person has to argue the other side, which I don't think either one of these is going to be difficult for people to argue, or for either of you to argue. So here we go. 2 games exist. Only these 2 games exist, and based off of innovation, because you want the most innovative game, which game do you pick? And the 2 games are Ultima Online and EverQuest.
I choose EverQuest.
All right, so Jason
Is
gets
that how you call dibs?
Yep.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give Troy. I'm going to give you. I'll give you a minute to think about your answer right now. But I'll give you a minute to make your argument. Then I'll go to Jason, who will have a minute 15. And then I'll give you 15 minutes to rebut anything that Jason said. So Troy, in your argument, make sure you mention the reasons why EQ is the most innovative, and then also try to rebut anything that you can think of for UO as well at the same time. So, all right. So, ready? Are you ready to go, Troy?
Sure.
All right, Troy.
He sounds
so confident. So confident.
Oh wow! Wow! Of all the two games you had to pick, jeez, man.
Okay, go ahead. Go.
The reason I chose EverQuest over UO, while UO, a lot of folks, granddaddy of them all, right? Like that's the one. The MMOs, they're a thing, right? UO. EverQuest to me was the one that took that to the next step. If you like, we've talked about how you look from game A to game B year after year, you don't see a ton of innovation. Maybe that's the biggest gap in innovation you've seen between a couple of games, between UO and the EverQuest franchise. And to me, it stands out by far as the most innovative of the genre, because that is the game, the series that everybody else started trying to be. That is the game that World of Warcraft was trying to be and hit a mark. It became the biggest thing in the genre, so much so that they're an exception to the rule, not an example of what the MMO market is. They did that looking at what EverQuest did.
All right. Okay. So, Jason?
Did I mention City of Heroes was my first MMO? Way before my time.
All right. But so, go ahead.
Tell me my start. Okay. I go with Ultima Online, of course, because like you said, first of all, it was earlier than EverQuest, and EverQuest to some extent copied its ideas as well, because you always go with what went before, and it said extensive universe, player versus player, all that sort of thing. And I'm really struggling here. I think Troy might win this by default because I've never played Ultima Online. But.
Alright, well, alright.
There we go. I can't do it. I'm sorry.
Alright, well, awesome game. Obviously, Troy gets the point on that one. Congratulations, Troy.
All the Ultima Online fans are going to just...
I know.
Oh, yeah.
All three of them.
My editor
chief. I was going to say, don't let Bree see this episode.
I know.
Do not listen to that.
Bree played MMOs when they were on Clay Tap.
All right, so as a prize for winning the show here, Troy, let you go first and introduce what you have done on the internet and where people can find you. So
you can definitely follow me on Twitter at NoobFridge. Everything I do gets cycled through there. All my writing, any videos, shows I take a part of, like this. I manage a haunted attraction in October. There's going to be some cool stuff on Twitter there. So at NoobFridge, definitely check us out over at Gamebreaker TV. We have fun with our video game writing and enjoy. We just try to have fun with everything we do. Play to Win TV, man. That's a new thing that we're doing. We're doing tons of shows, podcasts. We've got the Tesso Nation podcast. Hence, I kept bringing up ESO in almost every argument. We're also this week actually launching the Play to Win podcast, our flagship podcast, where we just cover all gaming in general. So lots of things going on there. Again, if you just want to follow everything I do at NoobFridge, everything is fun.
Excellent. And Jason, where can we find your stuff? Because you're everywhere.
Twitter at Winter Informal. I stream twitch.tv/Jason Winter. Of course, I write all the time on MMObomb.com, and I do some Guild Wars 2 writing over on MMORPG.com.
Awesome. And if you want to find more of my stuff, you can follow me on Twitter at Shadow. You can also obviously find me at Massively OP. I write the Tamriel Infinium column as well as the Hyperspace Speaking column over there, and do this show and the comic Sword and Board. So that's my stuff. And also obviously follow Massively OP on Twitter at MassivelyOP, MassivelyOP.com. We are also on YouTube at Massively Overpowered. Obviously, you know that, but we also stream as well on Massively Overpowered on Twitch. So check all that stuff out. And if you like these shows, if you like what we're doing here, obviously subscribe to us on YouTube. And then if you want to put in that extra little push, you can go to patreon.com/massivelyop and support us over there. We've got some really nice perks. And I want to thank, first off, let me thank our Patreon supporters, Viking and Dwayne, for giving us our questions today. And then also let me thank our guest very much. I really appreciate you guys. You guys are amazing to have on the show. Jason and Troy, loved having you here, and can't wait to have you both back. And there we go. So thanks again for coming. And everybody else, catch you later.